Because technology is ubiquitous.
Because technology is what connects us.
And humanity is resilient.
Wanting the best for everyone on the planet.
We can tackle problems, fast evolving problems, like never before. Technology for conservation is about the people, the places, and the priorities.
And Amazon Web Services has been the backbone of the infrastructure that powers our movement.
When you have speed on your side, you realize that we're all in this together.
And then we see that the actions that we take, while they might seem small on an individual level, when we add them up, they can quite literally move the world.
So leveraging these technologies for good, that is a unifying force.
Hello, SIS audience. We feeling good? Looking good? So, couldn't have planned that better myself. We're about to really synergize. So, I'm Lauren Stovall. I'm the head of nonprofit programs at AWS, where we believe in the power of adopting technology with purpose. And underlying true purpose is conviction. To keep going where most others would stop. To keep going in the face of pervasive prejudice. To keep going in the face of mindless might. To keep going in the face of an endangered and embattled environment. To keep going because we know what's at stake if we don't. And to be the ones that make the choices that bring us closer together and not farther apart. There's this quote that I love from Arundhati Roy. A new world is not only possible, she is on her way. And on a quiet day, I can hear her breathing. She is on her way. And it is us, not people like us, exactly us, that must take the steps to ensure she arrives. And so with that, it is my distinct pleasure to have with me today Simon Moss, the Chief Operating Officer and co-founder of Global Citizen, and Matthew Ray, Director of Strategic Partnerships at Nature Conservancy, whose organizations and teams are working tirelessly to ensure that we see and realize that better world. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you so much for being here. And it's too late. You're in it. So let's just jump in. And Matt, let's start with you. So Nature Conservancy's mission is to ensure that the land and water on which all life depends is maintained. First question, is that all? No, but in all seriousness, you and your team are working to realize the first ever smart networked watershed. What does that mean? Mm-hmm. Why does it matter? And why is technology crucial to making that possible?
Sure, it's a lot of parts to that question.
Yeah.
So let me step back. When you think of the Nature Conservancy, you typically think of an organization that was all about conservation of lands and forests, which is kind of the beginning. But we have a kind of a tangential move where we now understand that our built in our urban environments really impact those kind of natural spaces in a much higher degree than we ever thought possible. So we are looking at how do we impact these built environments such that it improves downstream nature, it improves the waterways that we all care about for like drinking water, fresh water. And so I work on a team within the Nature Conservancy called Brightstorm, and our mission is to bring kind of digital strategies and new innovative technologies into the world of surface water. And so that's why I'm here today for our partnership with AWS. We're looking at building what's called a smart connected watershed. And so if you think about how cities have been built, historically, when they first started building cities, what did they want to do with water that fell from the sky? They wanted to get rid of it as fast as possible. and they wanted to prevent flooding. So they did two things. They either built big pipes that piped the water directly out into the ocean or to the rivers, or they built big holes in the ground to catch water so that it wouldn't flood. And it had no indication of water quality. It had nothing around treating that water. It was really about preventing flooding or getting the water out of the way as fast as possible. And so our program looks at, what if we can't rip these cities down. We can't put nature in the middle of New York City. I mean, you have Central Park, you can do certain things, but the scale of the urban environment is so great that you have to come up with innovative solutions to kind of fix it and replicate the way nature used to, before the city was there, how flows can change through the cityscape. And so we are working on, with technology providers that use kind of forecasting of weather events on predictive rainfall and runoff into these stormwater ponds is what they're called. And we can actively control the outflows from those stormwater ponds with valves and gates, and use algorithms and use models to understand what's happening in that system, and so that we can better release water how it was released before the city was there. So we can kind of replicate natural flows, and that does a lot of things. That helps to increase water quality by holding water back. It reduces erosion downstream. It reduces flooding because you can release water before big storm events come. So there's a trifecta of benefits that happen when you can actually control water within an urban infrastructure. And so that's what we're doing is supercharging this effort with AWS by building the world's first kind of digital replicant of a stormwater watershed, so that we can do billions of experimentations on control algorithms, so that we can optimize those to be the best representation of nature that we can find.
No, that's so cool. And I think, of course, nature is beautiful and should be protected and conserved in and of itself, but also to the point, ... on which all life depends. And so that comes now to the human element of where this ultimately comes together. And so for those of you who aren't aware of Global Citizen, though I hope you are, but just in case, the movement has helped generate $49 billion in commitments to help end extreme poverty. Thank you for that. Impacting 1.3 billion lives. And so question for you, Simon, is how has technology helped you ensure that level of reach and impact?
So I'd start by first saying, we didn't start with anywhere near this level of sophistication. 15 years ago, I needed somewhere to host a website. And I needed it to be a bit fancier than GoDaddy, because our work at Global Citizen was about taking the passion, the interest of millions of citizens around the world. And our very first big activity that we launched was we were doing a concert in Central Park. And we'd had this idea that instead of just selling the tickets on the open market, because charity galas and charity fundraisers are great, but running an event in Central Park is expensive. So we teamed up with a bunch of sponsors. They helped cover the costs, and we gave away the tickets to people for taking action. And we first partnered with AWS because we didn't know how to scale a website properly, and so we needed someone who knew how to do that. And it started with this really simple idea that we knew that if we had some of the world's biggest bands coming to perform, I needed my website not to crash. And I think that's something that many of us can relate to. But over time, what we've built are a series of tools that have helped unleash the sort of impact that you were talking about before, that for us is about a really simple idea. Everyone now has a phone in their pocket. Everyone is now in between meetings in the bathroom while they're waiting for someone to come and grab coffee with them, looking at their phone. How do we best make use of that interstitial time to help people do good? Some of that's about how we show up on their social media feeds, but a lot of the time it's about building technology. Through our website and app, we power about 5 to 7 million actions a year, driven by grassroots citizens in 190 countries around the world, that we can then bundle and put in front of decision makers in philanthropy, in government and in business, to push and challenge them to do more and to do better. And so for us, where technology's gone is it's become the multiplier effect. It's become the thing that makes us go, I know how I can get a couple of dozen people volunteering at a soup kitchen in New York City. I live in Brooklyn, and we were just last weekend cleaning up our block. But we know that there are people all over the country doing that. And for us, the question is, how do we use the power of technology to unleash all of the people doing that? And right now, at a time when we're all here and we're talking about AI and the home of AI, we're really grappling with questions. How do you use AI for social good? And a question I want to pose to this group, and something we're thinking about a lot right now, and it's actually something we're talking lots to the AWS team about, is if generative LLMs are going to enable people to not just research faster, better, easier, but if they're going to help people be citizens in a different way, how are we not just creating cool technology that's really fun to look at? How are we going to use it to overcome the barriers that people keep telling us? Because in all of the work we've done, the sort of research we were just hearing about around DEI, the equivalent work we do is telling us three things. First, citizens right now are no less passionate than they've been for years, but they have absolutely no idea right now how to have impact. So the second piece is they're looking to their local communities, they're looking to the organisations at a grassroots level that they trust, and they're saying, I don't feel like I can change the world, I don't feel like I can change my country, but what can I do here in my community? And third, they're saying, and I trust the people around me, but I don't know how that's going to add up to something bigger. It's a lot of what we're working on at Global Citizen, and I think that for many of us in this room, we're grappling with how do we take a shifting technological, political, economic environment and turn that into real change and real impact that can continue to scale. And for us, technology is at the heart of how do we join all those pieces together.
And to the point of action and engagement, obviously nonprofit work hinges on action and it hinges on funding. And so to get to the heart of the matter, Matt, you of course shared that technology, the smart networked watershed is reliant on technology, period. Having this technology is what is enabling this to be possible. How have you all gone through the process of securing funding to be able to actually realize this opportunity?
The area in which we're doing our pilot, we're not only just building this in the digital space, but we're building this in the real world to test what we're doing. And that is in the Indian River Lagoon in Florida, and that's the nation's most biodiverse estuary. And so there are a lot of people that live in this area that are very passionate about the water quality within this estuary because it has a very high manatee population that's dying from nutrient pollution coming from urban runoff and other sources, agriculture and such. So there are, we received the seed money from there's a lot of family foundations there. There was one called the Haddock Foundation that gave us the seed money for this idea because I could have taken this project in any place in the country and done it because these watersheds exist everywhere around the world. But we had a group of folks there that cared passionately about this and wanted to kind of seed it. And so they seeded this initial development effort. And we build campaigns around it for, the Nature Conservancy has a very large reach and a big board of global members. And so we built this campaign called Runoff to Resilience. And we're raising $15 million for this initiative because it's pretty big in the real world. So that's we're, quarter of the way to our goal.
Yeah, and it's awesome. And really thinking about, even though it's kind of still in the space of the traditional funding model, it's also deciding when you're trying to innovate, where are those funding sources, where's that commitment, where's that connection, to really say, hey, if we do this here, the scale of this will ultimately be, life-changing if we can get this right, not just for this community, but obviously much further.
And obviously the AWS provides a lot of in-kind funding for the compute resources and those things that really help.
Yeah, absolutely.
Make the money go a lot farther.
Yeah, it's given the resources that you can to make it possible. And same question ultimately for you, Simon, especially in this changing world where funding models are flipped on their head, nonprofits are having to think about new revenue streams, new operating models. What's funding looking like for you all?
So first, I want to shout out to all of my colleagues and friends in the room. It's a shit show right now. We have the great privilege at Global Citizen. We're more enterprising because more of our work relies on earned revenue than lots of other organisations. But for so many of our friends and partners who've had their government funding ripped away, who've had the terms of reference and the terms of their funding agreements completely changed on them, I think we're sort of seeing two things and sort of have two examples. The first thing we're seeing is for all of the family offices, the family foundations, the philanthropists out there, the power of unrestricted right now is absolutely huge. We are primarily an advocacy and communications organisation, and so we've been working with so many of our grassroots and implementation partners, and they're saying to us, what we need is people to trust that we know what we're doing. Of course, we'll explain what we're doing, but if we have to try and rewrite a new version of a tactical activity plan and a log frame to share with you, I don't know how we're going to get it done and still support people. And so we're looking at that in the way that we try and broker and help get money into the hands of some of the world's poorest people and poorest communities. Just last month, we launched a new partnership with FIFA, the leaders of global football. Next year, America, alongside Canada and Mexico, will be hosting the World Cup. There'll be 6 matches here in San Francisco. There's a bunch in... So,
do all the cities.
So on behalf of the stadium previously called MetLife that is now being renamed New York, New Jersey, I'd like to thank FIFA for giving New York a little slide in. For anyone who's been to MetLife, it's most definitely in New Jersey. We'll be doing a halftime show for the first time in world football, which is really exciting. And the thing that we're most excited by for that is we started a discussion with FIFA 2 years ago about saying, how do we use the tremendous power of sport and fandom to try and catalyse new efforts, new money and new conversations into supporting things. So we launched what's called the FIFA Global Citizen Education Fund. We're in the process of raising $100 million to support grassroots education initiatives around the world. And for us, what's been so interesting is when you team up with football fans, and I'll call it football, not soccer, which is what some of you, thank you. When you work with football fans and you start teaming up with some of the largest visibility moments in the world, then actually the sorts of people who are willing to put money into that are very different to the people who most of us normally spend our time with. So for us, we're really asking ourselves, what are the unique and different collaborations that we can foster and bring to the table? And then the second example, I'll give just a very quick one, is we're seeing people who are doing real service delivery, their ability to clearly and crisply tell their impact story and talk about innovation is just so key right now. It's why all the discussions that everyone's here having are so important. We're right now helping Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance. They bulk buy vaccines for the world's poorest children. They've helped save 25 million lives over the last 25 years. Truly phenomenal impact. It's really hard for them to raise money from foreign aid budgets right now. And I was on the phone with them this morning before coming down here, and they're sharing with me the work they're doing with philanthropists, with private sector partners on small shifts that can make an absolutely huge difference. Things like they can make a 10% efficiency gain in supply chain and delivery times and costs, and that can save tens or hundreds of millions of dollars because they're moving billions of doses around the world. And so to me, I think that the big opportunity for funding is to ask, for each of us, what's our impact story that we can uniquely tell? Secondly, how can we help convince our donors that we do know what we're doing and that we can be trusted, that we don't have to redo all of our funding bases? And third, how do we lean into how the future is going to be even more effective? And that doesn't always mean more efficient, but it does mean more effective in helping have the impact that we care about.
Yeah, and I think it's important when you say, donors trusting you and unrestricted funding. I think we can all agree that it's a bunch of bullshit, that there's the concept of restricted funding in nonprofits as if because most organizations and people within them are willing to take less money than the private sector, that they need to be told what to do with their money as if they don't know what's going to take what it's going to take to make the greatest impact to solve a way harder problem than seeing if we can get a box to your door in 2 days. So let's fix that. And so to that end, I just want to do something real quick, and then we'll do the closing question. But how many of you, whether it's your job or not, are aware that your organization provides funding to nonprofits in some form or fashion, by a show of hands? Okay, less than I thought, so this one's going to be interesting. For those of you whose organizations provide funding to nonprofits, how many of you are aware of the position or perspective your organization has on technology-related investments or allowable technology innovation with nonprofits? Oh, we got one guy in the back here. Let's talk. But the point, obviously, of all of this is to say that hopefully what we're kind of learning and absorbing here is that technology is really critical for scale and solving really, really hard problems. Funding is also required to do that. And if the people funding don't understand the power of the technology and organizations are restricted from using it, then our impact will only go so far. And so final question ultimately for both of you, we'll start with Matt, is how should everybody in the room, whether their organization is a funding entity or not, be thinking about evangelizing the concept of why enabling nonprofits to innovate is critical?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm an engineer and a technologist, and I've seen throughout my career a lot of targets around improving the environment. And I've seen those targets not get met or be even close to being met through kind of the standard practice. So it's clear that the standard practice isn't working to catch up with the runaway kind of pollution that we're putting into the environment. So I truly believe that technological solutions to these problems, very similar to the one I'm talking about, but in many other ways in environmental kind of markets, are the way that we kind of get to where we need to be from the targets that we've set, because the status quo just isn't working.
Awesome. Simon?
I've spent the last 15 years using technology to try and create new ways for people to take action. It works great, but there are so many failed tests, failed product prototypes, and bad campaign ideas that you've got to leave on the cutting room floor. And so my request to people would be, back the bold ideas, not because they're going to be the ones that win, but because you're backing the people inside these organizations who are committed, as we heard just before, to the problem. They're in love with trying to address the problem that we're all caring about, and that if you back the people, they can do a lot of the rest with technology, with trial, with error, and with a whole lot of hard work.
Are we all into this? Can we agree? We're going to be about it? Thank you both so much. We are 30 minutes early, you guys.
30 seconds.
30 seconds, 30 minutes. I, on the other hand, no, but thank you both so much. Obviously, super informative. Listen, math isn't my thing. Do not hire me to be your financial advisor. But no, very, very much appreciate it. So insightful. Let's end extreme poverty and conserve all the land and water on which life depends. Why don't we?